Alright, this video is going to be, in no small way, controversial. I've already made a statement with the title alone that everyone has already read that will play into partisan talking points, confirmation bias, and media animosity most of all, but as the topic continues to echo through modern society, it feels like something that just needs to be said. This video is going to be primarily opinion-based. I will obviously try and rationalize exactly how and why I have arrived at these various conclusions, but keep in mind that my own individual thought process will not be identical, or even similar in many cases, to those who are watching the video. That is perfectly fine. I am, of course, open to hearing dissenting opinions in the comment section, what have you, but I want to be very plain right from the start that regardless of whether or not this video is controversial or unwanted by a particular demographic, I do not care. With that out of the way, let's officially get started. To begin, I want to go back in time. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. This is a Latin phrase meaning false in one thing, false in everything. It was originally adopted during the late stage Roman Empire and was adapted over following centuries into an actual legal term. Now, many courts in the modern day United States no longer view this as an explicit term, therefore directly instructing juries on its application. They choose instead to view it as an implied concept, but the fundamental idea behind why this phrase even exists in the first place is very, very important. Obviously, the burning question, why is it important, and how does it relate to the MeToo movement? In order to understand this, we need to examine what exactly the MeToo movement really is, or just as importantly, what it isn't. Because modern day definitions, especially on social media, have become twisted and warped beyond recognition, resulting in mass confusion. Originating in 2006, contrary to popular belief, the phrase Me Too was used as an empowerment slogan for victims of sexual violence. Coined by a woman named Tarana Burke, it was not until 2017 that the phrase would gain widespread recognition. In 2017, Time magazine published an article accusing Harvey Weinstein of covering up sexual harassment, and from there, it went absolutely viral. Embraced by celebrities such as Alyssa Milano, controversial as she may be, and Rose McGowan, the MeToo hashtag swept across social media and became a rallying cry for social accountability of abusers. In its early days, the movement was largely successful. Awareness of domestic issues, support for victims to know that they are not alone, and the amplification of accusations which led, on numerous different occasions, to corroboration and evidence as well as convictions, had a positive impact, albeit an abrupt and sometimes messy one, on many separate industries. However, just like any concept or movement in the modern digital age, public perception and the generally accepted meaning behind this movement would eventually shift. A year later, in 2018, Tarana Burke, the initial creator of and activist behind the MeToo movement, came out in opposition to what the movement had become. She said, quote, "The MeToo movement has lost its way," and subsequently attempted to explain that the implied gender war was an issue. The movement, in her opinion, had strayed too far from what it was originally meant to do, and had now begun to radicalize its followers into some sort of anti-men position, which was creating an artificially narrow lens for the overall movement, fueled by media obsession with salacious details that had pushed the movement away from its initial meaning. Over time, the movement continued to change. Now, when I say this next bit, please understand that I do not intend to view this as a one-sided issue, and I am merely attempting to give examples from all sides. Whether you believe one example I'm about to bring up or disbelieve another, whichever it is, means nothing to me, because the reality is, Me Too became politically weaponized. At one point, Brett Kavanaugh, a conservative Supreme Court Justice nominee, was being accused and excoriated by left-leaning media outlets for his alleged crimes, under the banner of Me Too. Alyssa Milano was famously protesting his confirmation hearing wearing a costume from The Handmaid's Tale, which is a dystopian novel and series about the oppression of women. At another point entirely, conservative media was focusing relentlessly on the accusations of a Biden staffer named Tara Reid, who alleged that now President Joseph Biden had assaulted her in a hallway. I could not care less which of these you personally believe is worthy, true, or worth prosecuting, because the truth of the matter is that they were both weaponized by opposing political groups under the banner of Me Too movements. What had initially started as a push for accountability became, in no uncertain terms, a political weapon. During the hearings involving Brett Kavanaugh's accuser, Christine Blasey Ford, a new hashtag began to appear, amplified by United States elected representatives even, called Believe All Women. That phrase, echoed by the media, other public figures, and eventually activists themselves, became a new target for those in opposition to it because it allowed them to ask the question, what about women who lie? This is where the Me Too movement began to fall apart, but it wasn't until Amber heard that the movement would eventually die. By making that statement, believe all women, it was opening the door for an argument of due process. Innocent until proven guilty is a core tenet of our Constitution, and indeed a core tenet of human rights. Activists, media, and public officials may not have meant to open that doorway, but they did, and thus the conversation began to change from how do we properly deal with these horrifying cases of abuse into how do we know that those accused are even guilty and deserve to have their lives destroyed. That is a fight you cannot win, but the impression, that one-sided certainty where accusations from women are to be believed in all cases because anything else is a failure of justice, would turn the movement from something real and valuable into something unsustainable and damaging. With all that said, we arrive at today. Amber Heard has been found guilty of defaming Johnny Depp with malice by a court of her peers and sentenced to a civil penalty of $10 million plus $5 million punitive damages, which, after some boring legal proceedings and the small counterclaim that she was awarded, will be $8,350,000 for Johnny Depp. These words matter. She was found guilty of defamation with malice, meaning the jury deemed that she vindictively and purposely manufactured her lies to hurt his reputation, and then continued to propagate those lies through a 6-week legal trial, culminating in the jury finding her on all counts presented by Mr. Depp guilty. Here's the thing though. Whether or not you agree with that, whether or not you think it's good, bad, just, or unjust, it doesn't matter, because the reality will be consistent that her case and her actions have destroyed the MeToo movement. Remember that phrase, falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. This phrase quite literally means that if she has told one lie under oath, the rest of her testimony therefore cannot be realistically believed, and when she has made numerous and grand statements about violence, abuse, and other injustice, it becomes very important that she tell the truth. Now, one other thing is critical to remember as well. This court case was open to the public. Under normal, closed-door circumstances, much of what was witnessed here would never have been available for millions of people to see. But in this case, it was, and that level of exposure brought with it an unimaginably loud bullhorn of societal ramifications. For starters, media headlines were seen for what they typically are, skewed, biased, and often inaccurate. When reporting on the events that had taken place on any particular given day, mainstream news sources were choosing very specific, very deliberate, and extremely biased examples of content which would paint a certain picture. Had the trial been private, no one would have actually known, but since it was public, everyone knows. It would be completely impossible to go over all the separate examples from this trial that indicate deception with malice, so I'll focus on two that seem rather descriptive. The first is something I have a great deal of experience with, and that is Photoshop. For the sake of being thorough, this is Amber Heard describing a set of photographs during cross-examination under oath.
You testified yesterday. This is another photograph of you on the night of May 21.
That's correct.
Ms. Heard, you testified yesterday. This is also a photograph of you from the same night, correct?
That is correct.
You testified yesterday that the only difference between these two photographs is that the light was turned on.
That's what it appears to be, yes.
The light is on both of these pictures, though. Isn't that right?
It looks to me like the one on the left has the vanity light, the makeup lights, you know, the more yellow-hued ones that go around the mirror on, and then the one on the right looks like it doesn't have those.
Amber Heard testified directly under oath that the difference between these two photographs, reinforced by her own testimony over multiple days — there are more clips, but it would be a very, very long video, just like it was a 6-week-long trial if I played them all — her own testimony was that the light was turned on in one of them. That means it is two separate pictures, but it isn't. These are, to use the technical term here, pixel-perfect replicas. The only difference is a manipulation of saturation, vibrance, and other color settings, which is most likely the result of a specific cell phone filter being used. Her testimony was that these are different photographs, taken before and after the, quote, the vanity light, the makeup lights, the more yellow-hued ones that go around the mirror, end quote, had been turned on. That is, categorically, verifiably, without any possible dispute ever, no matter how much you love her, it is untrue. She is testifying that two of the same image are different images, where the vanity light was turned on in between the points where they were captured, which is not possible, pixel perfect down to individual hair fragments. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. The next example pertains to her donations. Here's the clip.
So in this October 2018 interview, you said that you had, quote, donated, end quote, your entire divorce settlement to charity, right?
That's correct.
And in fact, your exact words were, quote, $7 million in total was donated to, I split it between the ACLU and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, end quote, right?
That's correct. I made that statement as soon as I got a divorce and we reached the settlement. That's when I pledged it, right then.
And there was a divorce settlement, you got $7 million. People were saying this is all about the money, but then you did something that twisted that whole argument. What did you do with that money?
$7 million in total was donated to, I split it between the ACLU and Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. And
Well, more power to you, because that's something that I've never
I
heard
wanted
of.
nothing.
But Emma, are you happy?
Yes.
Okay, I'm happy to
Absolutely.
hear that. Yeah.
I am.
Yeah,
I am. I'm
I
very
think that's
happy.
so important. Yeah.
But you hadn't donated your entire $7 million settlement to charity at that point, had you?
That's incorrect.
Sitting here today, Ms. Heard, you still haven't donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity. Isn't that right?
Incorrect. I pledged the entirety
No,
of the
Ms. Heard,
settlement,
that's
$7
not
million
my
to
question.
charity, and I
Ms. Heard,
intend to
Ms.
fulfill
Heard,
those obligations.
Ms. Heard, that's not my question. Please,
What was
try
your
to answer
question?
my question. Sitting here today, you have not donated the $7 million, donated, not pledged, donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous with one another. They're
But I
the same
don't.
thing.
Ms. Heard, I don't use it synonymously.
That's how donations are paid.
Ms. Heard, respectfully, that's not my question.
After their divorce settlement, Amber Heard was proclaiming in the definitive that she had donated, past tense, all of the money between two charities. On the stand, she refused to admit the reality that she had not donated that money. She had kept it for 13 straight months before the current lawsuit was filed. She avoided the words, pretended that the meaning of pledge is the same as that of donated, and further reinforced that she had been caught in a lie. These are just two small examples. There were dozens more, but the point remains that there were, on many separate occasions, examples being shown to the jury right in front of them that she was directly lying or misrepresenting reality on the stand. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. However, rather than just regurgitating the Latin here, we can go deeper. Beloved childhood fairy tales tackle this exact premise: the boy who cried wolf. The idea itself is pretty simple and pertains to the concept that over time, people will become desensitized to false reports. We even deal with this extensively in the medical field, as unexpected as it might be, where ICU alarms are constantly going off, but many of them pertain to non-urgent situations, right? There's always clutter in the ICU with these alarms. Over time, even doctors, nurses, and surgeons who are trained specifically to respond to all of this become desensitized and stop responding to these alarms as urgently. There is a wealth of scientific research that deals with false alarm intolerance, and going even further, over time, the effect of telling lies will result in an actual measurable increase in how well the subject personally believes the things that they are saying. From the National Library of Medicine, quote, "In summary, the current results showed that telling a lie, in contrast to simply planning a lie, resulted in fabrication inflation and led liars to increase their belief in lies told with the intention of deceiving," end quote. Even just one example of a lie will radically change how well that person is believed going forward by their peers. And just one example of a person who lies with regards to a specific event or situation will measurably change how well people believe similar stories. Amber Heard has now been judged as guilty for malicious lies on the topic of sexual violence, with a larger audience than anyone could have ever expected or anticipated, and that will have societal ramifications. She told these lies to a jury of her peers, who then deemed that her overall testimony could not be believed. But what's even worse is how the media has responded. Rolling Stone, quote, "Men always win. Survivors sickened by the Amber Heard verdict. It didn't matter what the verdict was, as one domestic violence survivor puts it. This case is my worst fear playing out on a public stage," end quote. Here's another one from Vice, quote, "We've all failed Amber Heard. The deluge of abusive content targeting Heard is not only failing Heard and future survivors, but also shaping how young people understand domestic violence," end quote. The Guardian, "The Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial was an orgy of misogyny," end quote. And the list goes on. Articles abound with regards to how Amber Heard is unjustly vilified, but I'd like to focus in on the article by Rolling Stone. This is a travesty of journalistic integrity on a scale that I don't even believe the author can fully realize. It discusses how other domestic abuse survivors are horrified and traumatized by the fact that Amber Heard lied and was subsequently convicted because of her lies. Whether she lied about all of it or just some of it doesn't matter. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. The implication behind this article is that the actual victims, real victims of abuse, will be silenced, although they seem to think that she's a real victim of it as well, despite all of the evidence that has been seen by everyone over the past 6 weeks. But I would go so far as to say that I believe the majority of those who feel threatened or silenced are those that have manufactured part or all of their claims, in a way that they now partially believe is true. The same way that Amber Heard has proven to have lied to the jury directly, at least for some of her testimony, if not all, the trial itself has proven that not all claims are as they appear. Hashtag Believe All Women was already a political battleground before this. So what do we expect will happen when the highest profile civil case in American history contained categorical and verifiable lies by the alleged victim, while the trial remained open, which has caused a serious amount of dissonance between what the public sees with their own two eyes and what the media pundits are now claiming, falsifying, and saying. Amber Heard, through a publicized trial in which she lied numerous times, has created a monolithic example of why Believe All Women is fundamentally impossible. Believing all women means believing Amber Heard. And Amber Heard lied multiple times about things where there was absolutely no need whatsoever to lie at all. Therefore, as unfortunate as it may be, as much as you may disagree with it, we arrive again at the Latin, falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. You may not personally believe that it is right, moral, or good that this happened at all, but the truth is that it has happened. I only have anecdotal evidence to support this, keep that in mind. Most people only have anecdotal evidence to support anything that they're saying about this trial right now. But the list of actual domestic abuse survivors or sexual violence survivors who have come out saying that this verdict has given them renewed faith in our justice system is growing by the minute. Over the span of 5 or so years, the MeToo movement grew, changed, and now dies. Because what it changed into was flimsy, indefensibly extreme, and unsustainable. Amber Heard was the final nail in its coffin, with, again, the most publicized trial, civil trial, perhaps in all of human history. Because the reality, and I do mean reality, that false claims exist, they do exist, as inconvenient as that is for so many activists, cannot be reconciled with the idea that every statement about abuse must be believed and then acted upon regardless of evidence or investigation. Amber Heard has killed the MeToo movement. Whether right or wrong, just or unjust, she has. And though it is not a death blow to the original idea of Me Too, which deals more with support than retribution and awareness as opposed to animosity, something I believe that most of us can accept is a good concept, the original Me Too idea, it is a death blow to what the movement has now become. That's it. If you want to support the channel, there are links down below, primarily Locals and Patreon to get away from AdSense. Also Odyssey, a YouTube platform alternative, another YouTuber to check out, merchandise, social media, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.